This Saturday episode of New Politics was released on the 25th of July, 2026, and produced on the lands of the Wangal and Gadigal people.
Andy Burnham is the new Prime Minister in Britain, but will he be the one to end the cycle of disappointment in British politics? And can his agenda force Anthony Albanese to become more ambitious in Australia? Making all the right sound bites is the easy part, but the real test is taking power back from the vested interests that benefit from nothing changing. I'm Eddie Djokovic.
I'm David Lewis. All of this is coming up in this big episode of New Politics.
And if you're listening in and haven't subscribed to our website at New Politics, you're missing out on half of what we do. There's regular articles and analysis of this strange world of politics. It's all free, and you can subscribe at newpolitics.com.au. And of course, if you do want to support us, it's just $5 per month at Patreon and Substack, and all of this is a good way to support independent journalism.
Andy Burnham is officially the country's new Prime Minister after he met with King Charles earlier this morning. The newly appointed Labour leader takes over from Keir Starmer. In his first speech outside Downing Street, Burnham vowed to break the pattern of his predecessors and, quote, do better.
Britain needs to show the world that we can regain our stability once again. And that is our challenge. To make politics work, to make it work better. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be. We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain.
Andy Burnham has just become Britain's 7th Prime Minister in a decade. He's promising cost of living relief, social housing or more social housing, promising regional investment and a transfer of power away from London. He's also apologised for the UK Labor Party not doing more about the issue of Gaza and Palestine. And even if he doesn't do anything at all about the issue, at least he started talking about it, whereas Keir Starmer just ignored it and locked up pensioners and people in wheelchairs for holding up Palestine action signs. So at least there's a bit of a change there. But we've seen this sort of stuff before, David, where you get a new leader or a new Prime Minister, they make the bold promises about renewal and making a difference, and then they hit the hard wall of reality and they quickly start backtracking their promises. And it does take a special type of leader to force through change and dismantle something as pervasive as Thatcherism and neoliberalism, which has affected pretty much the entire world. So he can bring up the rhetoric about redistributing economic power, rebuilding public services and reversing inequality. But it's just a question of whether he will be the one to make these changes or join that long list of disappointments in British politics.
We're in a really interesting phase of British politics. It was clear from the start that Keir Starmer wasn't the right person for the job. He came in with a lot of high hopes, and I'll be fair, after the run of disastrous Tory politicians in which Rishi Sunak was the most capable and under different circumstances might have been an okay Prime Minister in that John Major mould. Sunak got in after the damage of Liz Truss, after the damage of Boris Johnson. The Conservative Party were really on the nose, and there's just that sense that they were done. Keir Starmer comes in with a massive majority, a large amount of promise, and the notion that he would improve things. He doesn't improve things at all. He lacks the communication skills to be able to sell difficult policies. Kemi Badenoch starts off very badly but finds a rhythm, and she's still, I don't know how she'd go against a great parliamentary performer, but she certainly improved her stocks as an opposition leader under Starmer's ineffective questioning. He had a couple of good days, but mostly they were not good days. He was aided by Badenoch's lack of experience, but once she started getting the hang of things, he started to flounder even more. He should never have been Prime Minister. Now, Burnham is a much more charismatic speaker. He's a much more clearer communicator. There are problems. His parochialism, his idea of moving number 10 to the north, or having a number 10 of the north, which he's put in Manchester, is not a completely silly idea. Birmingham probably, or Liverpool, might have been the better choices. Of course, Burnham was mayor of Manchester, so there's that personal issue. Having said that, I don't know that Manchester's the best place. The idea of decentralising probably isn't a bad idea, but to bring up the spirit of Barnaby Joyce again, when he tried it with, what was the Department of
Agriculture.
And they moved to Tamworth, it was a total disaster. Now, I'd find it hard to believe that Andy Burnham would be anywhere near as disastrous as Barnaby Joyce as an administrator. But Tamworth lacked the infrastructure that was vital for these things. Hopefully Burnham has thought about all of this stuff, or Burnham's people has thought about all this stuff a bit more than Barnaby Joyce did.
You definitely hope that they have, or he has, but he's only been in the job for less than a week. But he's got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of damage that Margaret Thatcher did to the UK and to the world. There's no question about that. She didn't just privatise a lot of public assets, which are now impossible to buy back. There was all these other things. Thatcherism resulted in weakened unions, deregulated markets, and the transfer of economic power over to corporations and the asset classes. And once they grab onto that, it's very difficult to get that control or that economic power back. And a similar sort of thing happened in Australia under a Labor government in the 1980s, and centre-left governments all around the world, they adopted a lot of the Thatcherist neoliberalist policies. And most of the issues that we've got today for the UK and Australia, insecure work, unaffordable housing, infrastructure that's falling apart, wealth concentration, that's mainly because of these policies. And Andy Burnham, well, he can sound more progressive than Keir Starmer. As far as all the sound bites are concerned, he definitely is an improvement on Keir Starmer, but these are sound bites. And if he wants to reverse a lot of the stuff that he's been talking about, that requires additional spending, it requires more public ownership, it requires stronger collective bargaining for workers and for unions as well, strengthening unions. There needs to be more social housing, more regional investment. And a lot of that, it's all talk at the moment, he's only been in for a week, but that involves standing up to a lot of powerful interests in Britain. And you need a powerful politician that's got a lot of electoral support behind them to actually be able to do that.
He seems to have the support. He got in basically unchallenged.
Well, he wasn't even in British politics, or he wasn't even in British Parliament a month ago.
No, yeah.
2 months ago.
Watching as a student of the political art, it was a quite remarkable thing. He gets to see...
Well, he was previously in politics in the Blair government.
He's not come from nowhere, but he wins the seat back, runs essentially unopposed for the leadership, and in fact is to nominate for the leadership, you had to show that you had at least 81 people who would be prepared to support you, and that was a percentage of the seats. He got so many that nobody else could amass those 81 people unless there was going to be a last-minute change of mind, which is highly unlikely. So from a purely political point of view, it was an amazing job to get it. Again, it's one thing getting it, it's another thing doing stuff. He's made some right noises, taking the VAT off electricity bills. He's already had his first controversy in terms of prisoner accommodation. Whether that means his honeymoon period is over or whether it's just one of those little bubbles that will be forgotten in the next day or so while other things happen remains to be seen. But he does have a bit of an air of the all shirt, no trousers type. I'll have a pint of whatever you're having. He's got some problematic people in his cabinet. Wes Streeting is very close to private health. Having said that, he gave Streeting defence, so he may have neutralised Streeting there by putting him in a portfolio which doesn't have a lot to do with the mechanics of health.
Oh, of course, but it all gets back to what we discussed before. There's a lot of promise here, a lot of things that have been said, but it's now a matter of how that is implemented, if it is at all. And I think that generally most Australians don't pay that much attention to British politics like you and I do, but they're not going to pay that much attention to a new Prime Minister in a different country, even if it is the UK, or they're not going to pay that much attention to the Burnham government. But I think that Anthony Albanese will have to see what's going on and have a close look at what the UK Labor Party or the UK Labor government is doing. And it's not going to happen overnight if these things do happen. But if the types of things that Andy Burnham is talking about doing in Britain, if that results in lower living costs, or if it expands housing supply in a far more meaningful way that's been going in Australia, and if he improves public services, well, I think the Labor government will just find it harder to continue with Albanese's cautious incrementalism that's been going on for over 4 years. And Australia generally, as far as overall economic policy is concerned, it doesn't implement the large-scale economic policy or thinking in isolation. And the world went all Keynesian after the Second World War. So did Australia. Australia followed. Neoliberalism commenced in the early 1970s. Australia followed that as well. And all of the things related to the privatisation of public assets, that was all prominent in the UK and the US. That's where it all started. Australia followed suit as well. So generally, Australia follows, it's got its own independent economic policy, but as far as the big picture sort of economic programs, it follows what the rest of the world is doing. So I think generally with this sort of process, it's a wait and see game. Burnham is facing the same sort of pressures that Albanese is facing, where there's an electorate that seems to be calling out for change. They're desperate for change, while all the corporations and financial markets want everything to remain the same and in their benefit. But I think it's a change that I think most of us would like to see. We've been calling for this for some time, and I think the public, both in Australia and in the UK, they want to see a lot of changes, but there's just too many powerful interests that are resisting that change. And it's a challenge for Anthony Albanese in Australia, and I think it's going to be a challenge for Andy Burnham in the UK as well.
Is Burnham the man to do it?
Well, you just got to be a very powerful figure. Like Margaret Thatcher, we are totally opposed to her policies. She was a powerful figure that managed to change UK politics, but also world politics as well.
Yeah. And the lady was not for turning, as she said. I think the hope is Burnham is not just rhetoric, that he is of a principled nature. We've been burned too many times in Britain particularly. Boris Johnson was meant to be the man who got Brexit done. He didn't do anything. He was a joke candidate. Liz Truss was somehow worse than Boris Johnson. Theresa May looked better in retrospect because she was better than both Johnson and Truss, but wasn't...
Not much competition there.
No. Rory Stewart's books, he speaks very highly of Theresa May, and they are worth, if you're into politics, they are worth reading. He talks about his life as a backbencher and junior minister, and they're very interesting. Rishi Sunak was an ineffectual treasurer, but seemed to find a little bit of backbone as a prime minister. But it was, I think, the best can be said. It was way too little, way too late by the time Sunak came in. And then you get Keir Starmer, who was meant to be the guy who'd fix things, and he doesn't fix things. Partly
it could also be a case where all of these things have changed so massively, the economic power and, well, you could argue the political power has gone off to these vested interests. And once they're not going to hand it back so easily. I'm not sure what the solution is, whether it's a combination of having a powerful leader but also having a powerful government to back you up on all of this. But yeah, my argument is this: it's going to take a very strong Prime Minister and a very strong government to reverse a lot of these changes.
Yeah, no, and you're exactly right. Privilege, or nobody really, will give up power. Power has to be taken. These are the words of the revolutionaries. They resonate because they're true. Nobody will give up power willingly. Nobody will give up power because it's the right thing to do. Nobody will give up power because their time has passed. Power has to be taken. And this costs. It's one thing to be a populist government saying yes to everybody. It's another thing to be a government that makes hard decisions that will become popular. And again, Thatcher is the model. Was she a terrible prime minister? Yes, because her policies were wrong. Her approach, though, was right. There is no alternative. The lady's not for turning. Gough Whitlam crashed through a crash. We all forget that, okay, he crashed, but he crashed because he underestimated, I think, the power of those vested interests, including the Liberal Party, and their absolute pathological need to keep that power held. It's going to be an interesting time. I'm not optimistic for Burnham, I must say. He's a little bit too Manchester-centred, I think. Having said that, I've been wrong about this type of stuff in the past. And when I'm wrong about this type of stuff, I don't mind, because it means that things have been better than we expected.
We deal with the here and now in a way that builds for the future too. We choose progress over protest. We choose purpose over chaos. This is how Labor governs.
And this change in British leadership has happened just before Labor's 50th National Conference. That's Labor in Australia. And there is a strong relationship between the British and the Australian Labor parties. And obviously they're different parties in different countries, but there is a strong relationship between the two. And the membership of both parties are demanding similar sorts of things in their respective countries. But similar issue, there's a massive gap between the party membership and the executive government. And Labor governments in both countries are ignoring their own manifestos or platforms, and they've given way to pragmatism, essentially, once they get into government. And you need a little bit of pragmatism once you do get into government, but you can't just throw your entire manifesto and platform out and just not have any relevance to it. So here in Australia, so the conference is going on as we speak, but it's the same as what happened with the New South Wales Labor conference that we talked about a few weeks ago. Members want a stronger position on Gaza. That's what they wanted at the New South Wales conference. They're also requesting that at the national conference, and that's likely to be a big debating point during the national conference. And we can see what's going to happen. The executive will tone it down or ignore it. There's also the position on AUKUS that needs to be debated. And there's also the position on gas export taxing as well, gambling advertising. And Albanese has already ruled out the gas export tax at the national conference. He did that earlier. And this conference is being held in Adelaide, and I think it would be nice if they could reenact that scene from the 1975 National Conference in Terrigal, where Bob Hawke wore Speedos and Gough Whitlam wore the batik shirt, I think it was. But maybe this time around, Albanese could wear the Speedos poolside and Sally McManus could wear the batik shirt. But let's see how that goes. It would certainly make the conference a lot more interesting, David. But humour aside, I just think that this is a time that is ripe for change. Generally, within Australia and the UK, we've been talking about this for some time. This is the time that you make all of these changes. And it seems that Britain is about to embark on some major changes regarding the economy. I'm not sure if this is all wishful thinking, but I just think that they are going to go through some major changes, the economy, different foreign policy outlook as well, in the way that Britain relates to the United States and China, and seems to be more emphasis on the Middle East, West Asia, and changing its policies on Israel, Palestine and Gaza. And again, I'm not sure if this is wishful thinking, but this is the rhetoric that's coming out of the new British Prime Minister. And we know that the Albanese government won't be the first to do anything on international affairs. They always wait to see what others are doing, except for being the first to congratulate Donald Trump on attacking Iran a few months ago. But having a new style of government in Britain that could show a new pathway to fixing the many problems that exist in society, but it could also offer a new pathway for the Albanese government too. And they've got their national conference at the moment. And I just keep thinking that they'll probably look at what's happening in the UK to see how they do things over there and whether that's offering a new direction for the Labor brand of politics or the Labor style of politics. And that's one thing that I'd like to see come out of this national conference. Again, whether that's wishful thinking or not, that's a different issue, but this is the direction that it should be heading towards.
Now's the time to grasp the nettle, as Robbie Burns famously said. In fact, the time to grasp the nettle was probably the last election. I guess there's a sense in which you're either a party of government, a party of permanent government, or you're a party that governs, and that you take the risk that choices you make are going to be unpopular and lose you an election. Or you sit there and just watch a dishevelled opposition destroy itself while you remain in power. And again, I think it's fair to say that the Labor Party has had some major and worthwhile achievements, and I think that's got to be acknowledged. But we need to get them as consistent as international treaties will allow them to be on Palestine as possible, which should be that Australia, like many of the Labor Party do, and some of the Liberal Party, condemns the treatment of Palestine by the Israeli government. I think we need Labor to find that compassion, that Gough Whitlam Hawke compassion that basically said everybody should be allowed at the table. Nobody should be excluded from anything unreasonably. As Whitlam said, we can't legislate against bad luck, but we can mitigate against it. And Hawke, similar thing with Medicare. So we need a Labor Party who's prepared to say to the private health lobby, no, Australia doesn't want private health. We're going to stop funding you. To the education lobby, public schools are the backbone. The money you take is money that is going away from public schools. We're keeping that money and we're spending it on public schools. We want better unemployment policy, which will reduce crime, which will make sure that we are operating an economy at 100% of capacity or as close as possible to it, rather than this built-in 4 or 5% designed to keep wages down. So many specious arguments over this stuff. If everybody's working, everybody's happy, more or less. And if they're not happy, we'd have a decent health system to help them find their happiness. And this is what Labor should be doing, not just settling in for decades of government.
That's it for this episode of New Politics. Thanks for listening in. And if you value independent journalism without the influence of corporate backing, join New Politics at newpolitics.com.au and support us directly. It's just $5 per month, and we always try to keep it very simple. If you like what we do, please send some support our way. It keeps our commitment to independent journalism ticking along. I'm Eddie Djokovic. Thanks for listening in, and it's goodbye to our listeners.
I'm David Lewis. We'll see you next time.